Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to These Go to 11. Once again, I'm Nathan Bell. Joining me as always, Zach Bartles. Zach, what's going on, man?
You couldn't leave well enough alone, could you? Well, now you're going to pay.
Nice. Dude,
Little call ahead reference to a joke we haven't made. It will make 2 weeks from now.
I know.
What's going on?
It's going to be good. Excited for it. We're going to have Dutcher back on in a couple weeks. And we're gonna talk all things Halloween. Looking forward to it. It's actually we have certain ones that we do on the podcast all the time, and Halloween is one that we just love doing every year because we always find some new angle to kind of hit it from, and or we have a new guest on to talk about some things. And instead of having a new guest on, we're going to have a new co-host on to talk about these things. So it's going to be a lot of fun. I'm looking forward to that. Wait,
who's that? We're getting another co-host?
You.
What's going on?
You haven't been on to talk about Halloween with us before.
I don't feel like I'm new anymore.
Well, that's true.
I've got quite a history with the program.
That is true.
Going back years.
That is true.
It's like when they still called it New Girl in the 8th season. And I'm like, this woman has lived with these roommates now for 8 years. I don't think she's a new girl anymore. Nor is she a girl in that she's like 41.
Right. Using the term loosely.
Welcome back, Cotter. Well, you're still welcoming him back when he's been teaching there again for like 7 years? Really?
Oh, man. But still excited because we haven't talked Halloween yet. So, yes,
we've talked Christmas at Halloween, but we haven't talked Halloween.
Maybe this year we can talk Halloween at Christmas.
Oh, my gosh. The Nightmare Before Christmas, which I think is super overrated, unpopular opinion.
I don't it's funny because I remember seeing that movie when I was younger, but I don't remember being particularly drawn to it one way or the other. It's a movie that I think I could go back and watch and be like, hey, that's pretty fun, but it's not one. I know people who are drawn to that every year.
Yeah, that's the big tradition. And I mean, you can't ever understand that. It's always related to the place in life, the first few times you watched it, and a season of life, not the movie itself.
Right. Yeah, that's true. That's fair enough. Actually,
but Nathan, have you ever thought about this, man?
What's that?
Everything you've ever done was when you were younger.
That is true. Deep, man. Dude, you're going deep on this podcast. I don't know if my brain can handle it.
Well, they legalized marijuana up here, so...
I'm getting all heady, man.
What if we're actually just like marbles in a aliens? Oh, wait, that's from an Empire.
Oh, man. Well, before we go too far into the bunny trail, we're in theory going to get to a topic that we've talked about getting into for 2 weeks now. But before we do that, always want to give a shout out to Missional Wear. I'm sure they're going to do something pretty dope. I'm going to go ahead and email Jeff and see if I can get us a little promo code for Halloween. And nice. I know they don't have costumes and things like that, but hey, it's a holiday, and we want to promote stuff, and we want to get stuff, and we want to give stuff, and so I'm going to talk to them and see if we can get a promo code. But check out Missional Wear for all their great products. They just put out some new products. I actually meant to look them up before I got on here and forgot. But, it's Missional Wear, so how bad could it be?
Dude, Missional Wear is basically Amazon for Christians.
That is, yeah.
Okay?
Dude,
so what I'm saying is if you're a Christian, you don't use Amazon, you use Missional Wear.
That's right. Dude, that's spot on. That's awesome.
I wonder if you can get this. Do you have access in your studio to the worldwide information superhighway web?
I don't, because of the way I have my setup and everything. If I click onto something else, I left my device that would allow me to do that out in the living room. So yeah, no, I don't have it with me, but I don't know. Do you have access to that?
I guess. Hold on. I don't know. I was just going to see if they're selling the smoking book yet. I sold him a bunch of them. We did not a consignment, but an actual like traditional. I mean, which is what booksellers want to do. He was very good to work with.
Nice.
But then I noticed they weren't really for sale yet. I know. What does our boy Jeff? He's a man of mystery. What does he do for his day job? That can't be his thing.
I don't know. I mean, I don't know if he's got something else going on, but I mean, I know that this stuff keeps him pretty busy because he's at, all the different conferences and things that they have going on out there. I mean, he goes to the Doc and Devo thing that they do. I think, hasn't he been to, Together for the Gospel and Gospel Coalition and stuff like that before too?
Yeah. So I mean, I know it's a huge deal for him.
Yeah.
But my understanding, I assume he owns a gym or something based on his physique. Have I opened the right thing,
all
dude?
the boxes.
Oh, I opened Missional Wear. I'm going, why is there all this stuff about like water to end poverty and saving the planet? I mean, I'm all on board with that, but that doesn't seem like his.
This doesn't seem like his shtick.
Here we go. I thought maybe he was just expanding, which would be, whatever he wants. It's his deal.
He's merging with
the thing on the front was growing a beard. Oh, that's such a great shirt. And the onesie, man's chief end is to glorify God and enjoy Him forever.
Yeah, those onesies are great. I remember checking those out. Those are awesome. So if you know someone that's got a kid or someone who's having a kid or you're having a kid, definitely check those out.
Nathan, I'm a little disappointed actually right now.
Why? What's that?
If you go to collabs, there's only one. These go to 11.
Oh, he took the second one off? Come on.
Gone. Did we offend you, Jeff? I mean,
maybe he felt like he kept it up there long enough after having us not up there at all.
Dude, the gut check page is still just one T-shirt. There's no book. That's hilarious. One lovely, simple T-shirt. But you know what I noticed about These Go to 11's page?
What's that?
Everything is completely murdered out. At least that top row and half of the bottom, like black. Everything's black.
Oh yeah, there's no like
cool
color or anything like that on there.
We don't need, dude. This stark contrast. It's cool. We're a black and white worldview type podcast here. Anyway,
we're on a mission from God,
dude. I really wouldn't mind having one of these insulated mugs here.
Those tumblers, yeah.
Hey, Jeff, it's me, Zach. Let me up with those mugs.
I don't ask for much.
I didn't ask for anything, but he did give me 2 free T-shirts, so that's something.
Well, there you go. Nice.
Anyway, Missional Wear does a super spectacular job, and you know what? They've paid us in forever. Will always draw my gratitude is just a platform and putting us there alongside Doc and Devo and the Happy Rant and the Reform Pub. I mean, that's an honor. That's very cool.
Yeah, I mean, those guys, I mean, they get tons. I mean, we're talking, hundreds of thousands of listens and downloads. I mean, from Happy Rant, you go on there and you look at their downloads in an episode. I mean, and same thing with all those other guys. And
I know, I don't know why, but I know. Yeah. So I didn't, out of just spite, I didn't post a podcast on the other one on Gut Check for a month and a half.
Right.
And I finally just popped up this half-hour deal we had from like the middle of the night. It's funny.
I listened to it. It's great. It's
just stupid stuff, right? And it got way more listens, boom, 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 right away, and way more likes and stuff. And I was like, this whole experiment has taught me to get maximum kind of reaction and interaction. You gotta keep the people wanting more.
Yeah,
it works for us, you and I, to come out about every week.
Yep.
But for some reason, and I guess it works for the Happy Rant too. But for some reason, me and Ted, we gotta keep the people, their stomachs growling, if you will.
Keep them longing. Yeah, it's funny because I listened to that one, and you guys have like, what is it, like a 5-minute segment where you're like reading part of your book, and there's like all these, like, you're trying to figure out who said what, and you've both got like 2 different writings of
and it was like 3 words were missing, and that's it. And it took so long for us to come to that conclusion.
I was oh man, I couldn't stop laughing. It was great, dude.
And I'm sorry tonight if I cough an awful lot. I have bronchitis at least.
Oh.
That was the official diagnosis from the probably not really a doctor, medical assistant or whatever at the urgent care last night.
But
bronchitis at least.
But Zach, you are a dedicated entertainer. You are a dedicated podcaster, and you are here with us. And so
I'm a radio professional. I'm showing up to work.
That's right. That's right. You're not phoning it in. Well, I mean, you are phoning it in, but you're not phoning it in. I mean,
I'm Skyping it in. There's a difference.
Right.
and let me tell you, this doctor, he told me like 4 times I look good.
Like for your age or for your health?
No, like my appearance.
Oh, okay.
I mean, I had a tie and a jacket on, but I think the place was so swamped with just like slacker college students, because I live right on top of Michigan State University.
Oh, okay.
And they all wanted like notes that they didn't have to go to class, because he offered me a work note, and I'm like, nah, I kind of, largely supervise myself day to day.
Right.
And he's, oh man, how old are you? And I'm like, I'm 40. And he goes, oh, you look good. And then he just kept saying it. He said it one too many times. It went from being like a compliment to being creepy.
Maybe he was hoping you'd drop him your number or something.
Well, he had it. It's all in my phone.
Oh, man.
So, hey, Nathan, what's this topic you want to talk about? I haven't heard one about it. You've never brought it up.
I know, right? Oh, man. Yeah.
Well, you talk. I'm going to do something really unprofessional, and that is to go and turn off this overhead light that's blinding me.
Nice.
One moment.
All right. So, yeah, it was 2 weeks ago where, we were trying to figure out what we were going to do, and, you and I were talking, and all of a sudden, the topic that we initially thought we were going to do was going to be, well, actually, no, we had initially planned to do the dragon prints. And I was like, oh, well, maybe that one will be like, a 20-minute thing. And then we'll do like 20 minutes about things that Christians either get too overworked about that they shouldn't, or, yeah, that's just my phone, so don't worry about it. Or things that Christians don't get worked up enough about, and they should. And so, for me, like 2 weeks ago when we did the Dragon Prince, I was like, oh, we should really do this. I think it'll be great. And then we ended up spending the whole episode talking about the Dragon Prince, which I thought was fantastic. And then we decided we'd go ahead and and do it the next week. And then the next week, you had this other topic that you wanted to talk about, which was...
It was like a fire in my bones, man.
Yeah. And
social gospel. We were walking right down the freaking footprints of Schleiermacher and Rischel.
That's and it ended up, I mean, I think it was great. I mean, you and I got off that one, and we were just kind of like, I think this is one of the best ones that we've done so far. This was just, it was great. And so I thought this week that we would see if we hit it. You're like, yeah, I really haven't given a ton of thought to the topic, so we'll see how it goes. But I'm cool to flex. Zach, I've got a timer on to see, after I'm done talking here and setting this up, if we actually get to it and how long we actually stay on it. So
this is like, did you grow up in Baltimore or a small town?
No, I grew up in a small town in New Hampshire. So
you probably had that one business that one building in the business district that couldn't keep it's a Chinese restaurant for 9 months, then it's a frozen yogurt place,
and then it goes back to being a Chinese restaurant.
It was cursed. It just turned over and over. This topic is that building, dude.
It is.
Let's make it work, man. Let's put in like our little hot yoga studio. We're gonna get out a business loan. We're gonna put up signage. We're gonna start a social media campaign. Listen, everybody, this is happening today.
It will not become the laundromat, doggone it.
Let's always wind up something really sad too. Oh, I know. Like the end is like the last thing it is like something unspeakably sad.
It's like the thing, like you have like Dollar Tree or the dollar store, like the upper crust one, but then you have like whatever the one underneath that is.
Yeah, the Dollar Tree or Dollar General even or something. Yeah. And you're like, okay. I mean, if I need a toothbrush and I don't care if there's lead in it, I'll just run in there real quick. And then it'll become like either like some kind of like government agency outpost or like a and now this is going to sound racist, and I don't mean it to, and I acknowledge that it sounds racist. This is purely just what I have seen happen a few times. It will become an Oriental market, but not a nice one. There are nice ones.
Yeah.
In fact, we shop semi-regularly at one where you get stuff you can't get anywhere else. Bok choy or whatever, you know.
Yep.
You want to make pho, you got to go to a certain. But there are the dirty ones, just like there are the dirty, you know, American markets.
Oh yeah.
There are the gross ones where you walk in and it smells like you just walked into the back of Petco, and that's the ultimate destiny for that building, man.
That's right.
But it's not the ultimate.
That's
destiny
not what
for
we're
this
going to do
topic.
here. That's right.
This topic's going to come back, and it's going to be like a Five Guys or something, and everyone's going to love it.
That's
They're not
right.
going to remember those years when it was, you know, it was all that turnover.
Oh man. All right, let's see if we can hit it. I got the timer going. Here we go. So yeah, I mean, this was kind of, Zach, I was thinking about this just in light of, I look around on social media and I do my best to stay out of making comments on things. A lot of the stuff I post on Facebook is really just on my personal page. It's really kind of innocuous and it's funny, humorous, or it's like food stuff because I love food. So, these.
And
cool,
you're always
like,
sending me private messages about wanting to sell the Cutco knives. You want me to sell that under you?
That's right. I'm setting up a pyramid scheme. You're my first.
That doesn't count as getting off topic. So.
And so a lot of the times I'm looking at things and someone will post a comment and it'll be something about a movie or it'll be something about politics or it'll be something about even social things. We spent a lot of time talking about that last week. And I feel like you always have those trolls who are willing to jump in and start the first bit of barbing at whatever the person said or did on either side of the argument. And then all of a sudden it just snowballs into something absolutely ludicrous and ridiculous. And I started kind of looking at that and looking at the greater kind of scheme of, well, who's actually getting involved in a lot of these conversations? Is it people who aren't believers or people who are believers? And it's a fair mix, but I notice people who, are saying that they're believers are jumping into these things, and they seem to be jumping in full force. And it had me scratching my head going, is this really where we as Christians should be burning our credit, for lack of a better word? Is this where we should be jumping in? Is this where we should be putting our efforts in and fighting against in Facebook, in Twitter, in social media? And I really, more and more I see these things, I'm just not seeing productive public conversations going on. And I feel like people are making mountains out of molehills in a lot of these instances. Do you notice that? Do you find that at all when you're kind of going through social media and looking through things?
Not a bit, man. What I see is mostly everybody is very even-keeled. They don't get emotional, and every interaction actually moves the dialogue forward. A lot of minds are changed. A lot of perspectives are kind of widened and broadened, and people thank each other for the opportunity to think about an opposing viewpoint.
It's always polite and cordial.
No, man. And what's funny is I don't know if it's, when you're born and live half your life with no such thing as the internet, and then by the time you've already had a kid, by the time social media is a thing. I don't know if it's social media evolving and maturing, or if it's just me getting older and maturing. But it is very, very rare for me to even if I see somebody like making a big deal out of something stupid and getting all upset, I will rarely even like kind of dip in and say, guys, come on, maybe not. I'm not touching it.
Yeah.
It's just poison.
Yeah. It's
going to drag down everyone who gets it's Korah's rebellion, man. If you get close, this earth is going to swallow you up. So I don't. I've been trying really hard to steer clear. Although I will, and this is probably sinful, I will read a stupid interaction that goes spinning out of control and get all sorts of kind of humorous takeaway, and that's out of my basest instincts, but yeah, I see it everywhere. Yeah.
Yeah. To me, I think one of the things that I see as just totally being blown up out of proportion and going totally crazy and sideways is particularly, I'm involved in a couple of different media groups online. Popcorn Theology is one, and then there are a few others. There's some gaming groups that I'm involved in. And I find it interesting how many times somebody will ask a question about something, and immediately somebody feels the need to point out the quote-unquote wrong thing that they're doing in watching or playing such a thing, I remember when Deadpool came out and somebody was just asking a question. Has anyone here seen Deadpool, and what are your thoughts?
And everyone linked to the John Piper thing about why you shouldn't see it, even though he never did.
Right. And that's exactly what happens. Is all of a sudden you have people jumping into the middle of these conversations where A, they haven't seen it, or B, you're right, they're linking it to people who haven't seen it, and they have their opinion and views on it. And I'm like, that's not even what this guy asked. This guy simply asked if there were people who had seen it and what your thoughts are. And it's funny because then people will respond and say, oh yeah, I saw it. I thought it was great. If you're sensitive to these things, just kind of watch out. But other than that, enjoy type thing. And it's like, then all of a sudden you have it de-evolving into, well, I can't believe you would watch that. And it, it goes on and on and on. And I'm looking at these things, and again, primarily you have some people in these groups who aren't believers, but you have a lot of them primarily who are. And I'm like, why are we making such a big deal out of these things? And can't we just let the guy ask a question, let somebody answer, and then let this gentleman make up his own mind about whether or not he's going to see it? But that's not what's happening in a lot of cases, and I'm bringing up this one specific instance with media, and it happens all over the place with almost everything. What are some things that you notice and see where people are kind of blowing something out of proportion that really shouldn't be or didn't even start that way?
Well, I think anytime someone asks for a kind of balanced position or insight into something that even tangentially elbows into the political arena, it's just going to blow up into a partisan. You're one move from. Does anyone know exactly what Proposition A means for our local county school board? To Hillary's a 33rd degree Mason and blah blah blah. That's always going to happen.
Yeah.
What you're describing. With the games and the movies is I tried to coin a term once, which is to holify.
Okay.
And what it is, it's a phenomenon that I bump into it fairly regularly in ordinary spoken conversation or usually internet social network type sites. And it means basically the holifier is it's kind of a relative of the story topper. The story topper,
Yeah.
You've got this story. They've got I got pulled over twice and I got pulled over 9 times in one day.
Right.
Or, they're a one-upper.
Yeah.
But in a spiritual sense.
Yeah.
So, basically what they do is they can strike any time, regardless of subject being discussed. They spew this uber spiritual stuff, and that's all. And it leaves the one being holified with the impression that I'm not holy enough in how I've expressed myself or in what I'm consuming or with anything. And it sounds absurd and random, and I wonder what the outsider who's not a believer even thinks of it. But it can begin with just like a quip, like, do you ever just get down on your knees and thank God that you know me and you have access to my dementia? right? Like this is a quote from George Costanza.
Yep.
You say that on Facebook and someone says, no, I thank God that I know him and I have access through him through Jesus Christ. Boom. Holified.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Or you say, I hate it when people cut you off in traffic because they're texting and they're eating or they're putting on makeup and they say, hate. How's that Christ-like? Right? Something like that. You should be on your knees praying for these people, not complaining about them on Facebook. Anything. Or hey, look at this video, man. Channing is awesome. And they say, no, man is awesome. The only thing that's awesome is God alone, holified. And so I'm really sensitive to that because I find it to be not the only thing that I hate about it is that it's annoying. I mean, I get where they're coming from.
Right.
I don't want to be corrected by you when you just don't understand the context of what's being said or the tone in which it's being said.
Yeah.
Now, when it comes to, when today somebody asked a friend of mine who's a pastor, has anyone seen Jack Ryan?
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know, have you seen it?
No, I haven't. I've been meaning to because I heard it was really good.
I'll tell you what, Jim Halpert has really upped like the pranks he plays on people. Now he shoots them, but, which I kept thinking. I'm like, well, Jim, why are you being so? I couldn't quite get my mind around it. But I answered, and a few other people were like, well, here's some good and some bad. All in all, it's probably worth the time. And then another guy comes in with another pastor in our same denomination with. My wife and I watched 2 episodes of it, and there was nudity in language, and it's incompatible with being a Christ follower, and blah blah blah. And it was very like, here's the final word on it.
Right.
And in my mind, I'm going, okay, so you're clearly implying that everyone who came before and said, yeah, maybe check it out, is not holy, not Christ-like.
Right.
So what? In many cases, there are certain things that truly no Christian probably should watch, but that line is hard to determine, and where the line is not completely cut and dried, we have, disputable matters.
Right.
And so someone saying, I come in here and dictate that you cannot watch this and still be a Christian is showing themselves to be the weaker brother.
Yeah.
And at that point, then, I guess it's the responsibility of the stronger brother just to say, okay, right? And not get into the argument, not get into the debate, and just say, I won't bring this up because it will offend you. And in the sense of it may cause you to sin. And I certainly don't want to do that.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and I think even greater, some of the reasons why I've chosen in more recent years not to engage in those things isn't necessarily for the sake of the brother, even though it should be. It's more for the sake of the unbeliever who's looking on. And I know for me that's become more of my motivation in not engaging in those things is, like you said, what are the unbelievers who are looking on? What are they thinking about this? And I feel like, if I can just not respond, then hopefully that's a better testimony than this person who just responded and condemned, like you said, everyone who came before them for watching whatever it is. And so, yeah, I mean, it's fascinating to me what really gets under people's skin. And I feel like really is that what we're gonna, is that, like I said, is that what we're gonna burn our credit on right now when it comes to portraying Christ is, you shouldn't be watching this. You shouldn't be doing that. And I find it fascinating how many times that happens. And I'm wondering, Zach, if, as a pastor over the years, different people that you've, observed and counseled and talked to, is it almost a lack of maturity, do you think, where they truly believe that, this is a critical issue of the Bible and the gospel, and so I have to speak about this, or is this just? I mean, I don't know. What are your thoughts on that coming from pastorally? Because I'm sure you've seen and observed a lot more of this, working in the larger church setting with various people.
I don't know that I have. I mean, I think this tends to play out most on social media. And, my church, I'd say a good third to half are not on any form of social media. I think that I think it may be related to both maturity and to personality. Maturity in the sense of, kind of cage stage adjacent type stuff, when someone is, either a new believer or like newly passionate about their faith. It's the reason that we have the Calvinist cage stage thing is because you go, oh my gosh, all of a sudden I see that I've been missing something and I can't get back the time that I was missing it. And so my mission's got to be to make sure that nobody else ever misses it.
Right.
And by whatever means necessary. And I think the same kind of thing can happen when someone's a nominal Christian and maybe they start, attending and getting involved in church more regularly, reading their scriptures, trying to actually live a holy life where maybe before it was kind of skate by. And suddenly they see in everyone else their own past mistakes. So now I have to, it's my job, it's my God-given mission to point them out, to spare them what I can't go back and spare myself. I think there might be some of that. It's like a cage stage situation where, work on you, and maybe all of us as Christians, it's been, quote unquote refuted. Even, I think there was even a, those videos, about love sinners and hate your own sin.
Right.
I don't know that that's horrible advice.
Right.
I mean, we should hate the sin in our culture and we should call sin. Absolutely.
Sure.
But first and foremost, man, if we were all concerned with ourselves, we'd see a lot less of this going off about these little offenses we see in other people's, they're not even usually the main point of the statement. Right. But something they accidentally might have even said or been a little bit less than precise about.
Yeah.
If we were more focused on how I'm becoming more holy rather than how you need to, I probably, we'd see that. And so it's related, I think, to maturity, but also just some people have a personality, I do, that tends toward enjoying kind of, not even like angry arguing, just kind of crossing sabers and kind of verbal fencing for fun. I was on the debate team in college. I think it's fun. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I mean, that's how, in certain Jewish traditions, that's how you learn, debating the topics. Yep. It's quite possible that was part of Jesus' religious training. I think the thing is not to resort to the ad hominem, and when our example for people debating stuff is now the 24-hour news cycle, where everyone's basically implying the other person is the devil. Right. I don't know, maybe we need a moratorium on this in America, where we just say, we're not going to debate, quote unquote, anything for a few years, and we're just going to take some time to work on us.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think too, the thing is, because I'm very similar to you in that I enjoy debating with people. I enjoy the argument, which is why I had to be so careful when we had the gentleman on earlier who wrote the book on atheism. And I went back and listened to that
careful
podcast.
With that phrase. Somebody wrote the book on something often means they're a real expert.
Well, and that's the thing is, I went back and listened to that podcast, and I was like, I let myself get sucked into a debate format more than I really wanted to. And I appreciate you, Zach, because you really pulled things more around in that conversation and in that topic. And I think it's important to realize who you're talking to and to make sure that they're engaging on the same level as you. Because I have a friend, I actually have a couple friends who we both, we all enjoy that debating aspect. And, we'll be talking about something and we can switch views in a heartbeat and play devil's advocate. But we all know we enjoy that perspective and we enjoy the argument and we enjoy getting different views and thinking about things differently and having that perspective. And so we understand that. And I remember when I was so much younger than I am now, having that mentality and then realizing that, oh, not everybody likes this. This isn't, people don't enjoy this. Like, I'm having
when I was about 14, I was like, oh, my mom doesn't like this?
Right.
I just thought we were having fun here.
Yeah.
She's next to tears.
Well, it's hysterical because I one of my friends that I grew up with, he and I were like that. And I still keep in contact with him and his folks. And she's like, I remember so many times listening to the two of you thinking you were just in, like your friendship was over because of this. And then you'd be back doing it the very next day and thinking the same thing. And it's like, no, we loved it. We were so passionate about what we were talking about. And it didn't matter, which side we were taking. We were just passionate about it because we enjoyed the banter back and forth, and we enjoyed listening to the perspectives that came out, and it was fun. And I remember it got me into trouble when I was first married, and my wife just looking at me going, I am not having fun. I do not enjoy this. You need to stop. And it took me a while to really get out of that mindset and mentality with her that, she's not looking to, for somebody to talk with like that. She's, more plain and straightforward, and, she's not looking for somebody, to jump in and play devil's advocate on something. She just, if she needs to talk, she wants to talk, just listen and okay, yep, and move on.
Hey, Nathan, don't forget to go back and edit out when you called your wife plain a minute ago. It's taken out of context.
Yeah,
my wife is the same way, and it did take a while. I think we were still engaged when I realized this just unless it's very, very lighthearted. It can't get heated in a fun way as an argument. It's going to seem like a fight.
Yeah.
But I mean, I don't even know if you know sometimes when you're doing it, Nathan, because do you remember when we were talking to that guy who wrote that book, who self-published the book on atheism, and you were like, dude, I could crush your windpipe as if it were a styrofoam cup. And he was just quiet for a while.
I think I edited that out of the podcast.
Oh yeah, that was probably a good move, just so there's no evidence. But I mean,
you were going harsh, man. You were going harsh.
And then I was like, listen, dude, don't mess with Nate. He's a purple belt.
That's right. He's a purple belt. Oh, man. So
there was another end to your question, right? Which was, maybe hold on. Let me jump in a minute with one more thing.
Yeah.
And this is where I have often made a real big deal and had one of those kind of punctuated equilibrium leaps forward in maturity, maybe. Mm-hmm. In other words, just kind of an epiphany of like, geez, man, I've been obnoxious.
Yeah.
And that was, I think it was also a cage stage thing, where as a minister in a particular tradition with a particular outlook on things, meaning, listening to the White Horse Inn and reading Modern Reformation, for a long time listening to Chris Roseborough and Fighting for the Faith, mm-hmm. and being very, very convinced that seeker-driven, felt needs, seeker-sensitive, this kind of entertainment, draw them in, attractional model church was just so unbiblical and just such a detriment to the church that I was just walking around with I emptied a whole bag of chips onto my shoulders and was just like ready to be like, that's not been being in circles with pastors of all different varieties. Mm-hmm. What was weird was I could easily have a conversation with my friend who's a female Episcopal priest whose theology is actually semi-conservative, whose social views are way out there. Mm-hmm. We'd never argue because we were quite different. Mm-hmm. But then guys who are in the free church tradition, non-denom churches, other fellow Baptists, they'd get in here with something about, mission driven, or they used just the wrong word that I, was convinced was a buzzword for something, using the world's and I to this day I still believe all this stuff.
Right.
I don't think it's you're satanic or anything. I just don't think it's the best way to go.
Yeah.
But I would really just I got to the point where a guy called me at the church, a fellow pastor, and was like, "Dude, are you okay? I mean, it seems like you are so mad all the time about people who minister from a different point of view than you." And I was like, "Yeah, no, I'm fine, man. I don't like hearing this." And I just kind of shut him down and didn't hear it. And like a year later, I had to hit him back up. And I was just like, "I think maybe you were onto something." I think I like the debate, and not everyone kind of gets that that's the context. I'm passionate about the subject matter. And the problem is, if somebody comes to me, or we're both entering into this thing with the point of view of, we're going to debate this topic, and here's kind of the vibe of it.
Yeah.
Okay, that's fine. If you're just posting like, "Hey, here's an article from Rick Warren's Ministry Toolbox," and I come out of left field with, "What are you blah blah," that's not fine. That's just obnoxious. And so that's in the church, I think, like how we do things, terms that are used. The minutia and nuance of different polities and stuff, we can make too big a deal out of it, rather than going, guys, the world hates the gospel. We all, at the end of the day, love the gospel, even though it may manifest in different ways. Let's just link arms, and if we want to debate, fine, that's good, that's fine, but let's not let that get in the way of the latter. Is less important than the former. That took me a long time, actually, and I'm a little embarrassed thinking back to, and I not to pass the blame at all. It was all me, but I was feeding myself stuff that maybe some people can like listen to and read and think about. And it was just keeping me angry. About the direction of things, and it's probably Luther said, "I'm never more holy than when I'm a little angry," and that's fine, but keep it a little angry, right? In order to be angry and sin not, you can't let it burn out of control. And so that was for me probably making way too big a deal. Especially, I mean, it's not even my church. It's like your church. Who am I to come in and dive bomb you? You guys are doing it all wrong. But I'm not your bishop. I'm there's some other schlub over here. I'm nobody. So, and I'm sure there have been other times where I never had that epiphany, where I did kind of the same sort of thing. Hopefully I'm not doing it now.
One of the things that I observe, and I know that this was my issue in learning more about Reformed theology and kind of working my way through that, and I see it so much now, and I've backed off so much. Is people, other brothers and sisters who are not, full on into Reformed theology, and I know some people are going to be like, well, if you're not into Reformed theology, then you're really not a Christian, blah, blah. It's like, you know what? I had years and years and years of my life where I was not into Reformed theology, where I did not put the pieces together of what Reformed theology actually was, what the sovereignty of God actually truly meant. And I'll be honest, I still don't quite understand what it all means in terms of, other than the fact that God is just overarchingly in control of everything, and he's involved in everything. But how he works that together, and I feel, just bad sometimes for the way that I treated people both before I was into Reformed theology and after, because from the perspective of where I was as an Arminian, just for the easiest term to throw out there, I could out-argue my Reformed peers. And again, I that argumentative spirit, I love doing that. And, at times there were quite a few apologies that I had to make to people during those times, because I was not kind in the way I did it. And then I carried that personality kind of over when learning about Reformed theology and you know, kind of being like, oh, well, this is what it actually means, and that understanding finally hitting me. And I feel like in the Reformed circle, in general, we do a poor job at acknowledging that, you know, our brothers and sisters in Christ who, you know, I don't care if you want to call them unreformed, I don't care if you want to call them Arminian, whatever, but, you know, these are our brothers and sisters in Christ who put their faith and trust in Jesus Christ. They don't understand the full complement, and even those that do understand it and are just like, I disagree with you on these points and these points and these points. Like, there's so much fire and, you know, just vitriol that goes out to from our camp into those groups, and I find that sad at times, because I think it's important. I think there are certain things that are understood better from the perspective of being Reformed, but at the end of the day, you know, we don't have every single aspect of doctrine and theology correct and right. And, you know, to extend someone else that and say, you know what, you're not at that point yet where you understand that, you know, and maybe you never will be, and that's okay.
That sounds like a little bit of a condescending approach to it.
I know, but do you understand what I'm getting at and what I'm saying?
Well, yeah,
you know,
you're talking cage stage Calvinism,
yeah.
And it's what the hilarious thing is, but not ha hilarious is. It's a complete lack of extending any grace to someone because you've discovered the doctrines of grace.
Right.
And it's, you know what I think is the ultimate cure for that, dude?
What's that?
Yeah, I came to it by watching what I thought would be something that would kind of feed my monster in the cage, which was a long documentary called, I've mentioned it before, it's called Amazing Grace, The History and Theology of Calvinism. Mm-hmm. Eric Holmberg put together. He's a guy who used to do like Hell's Bells and the rock and roll stuff.
Yep.
And it had D. James Kennedy, R.C. Sproul. It had R.C. Sproul Jr. doing a lot of good work. And excuse me, Tom Askell, a lot of guys. And then it had a bunch of quotes from Calvin. And I noticed about halfway through, I'm like, there have been like 25 quotes from John Wesley. So I jotted down all the works by Wesley that he cited.
Yeah.
And I went back and read them. And I went, holy smokes, this guy was so in tune with who God is.
Yeah.
And so and such a hero to me at this point. That, I mean, this notion I had in my mind that you were never going to move beyond a certain kind of elementary understanding of theology unless you embraced Reformed theology, went right out the window.
Yeah.
There's literally no ceiling on. There's no brand name requirement for becoming incredibly wise and holy.
Yeah.
Wesley was just such a godly guy, and yeah, obviously there's huge differences in theology.
Right.
You know, perfection, sinless perfection. You know, and the approach to baptism and stuff, but 90% of what he wrote, I can read and be not only encouraged by, but challenged by, and want to be, you know, I kind of want to be more like him because I see that even when he dropped the ball, it just made him want more and more to please God.
Yeah.
And he understood grace. You know, the notion of prevenient grace and stuff. And I don't think that's right on. But at the end of the day, I think with maturity too, and maybe this is emblematic. It's not just Calvinism and Arminianism. It's a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
I feel like the wiser I get, the more I realize both Calvinist and Arminian are describing something they only see one side of the sphere.
Right.
And much of the time we're describing the same thing from two different angles.
Yeah.
You and I as Calvinists are trying to understand God's perspective of this stuff because we see it laid out in Scripture that way. And I think that the Arminian is just, they're looking at it from human eyes going, you know, this is what I see practically happening. Mm-hmm. And I proclaim the gospel. And when someone makes a decision to put their faith in Jesus, they've accepted the grace that God floated, you know, as like a test drive at them. And,
right.
and I've seen people kind of wake up to that, understand it, and reject it. I've seen other people, and they're describing the same sort of stuff that Spurgeon acknowledges or that Calvin would. They're just looking at it from the opposite direction.
Right.
And I think a lot of issues wind up being that way. People talking past each other.
Yeah.
And instead of saying, maybe if we put your thing and my thing together, some of it's going to be contradictory, and we have to acknowledge that, but some of it's going to be complementary, and we can help each other see.
Yeah.
Debate doesn't work that way, though, because you're on the defensive. And when you're on the defensive, obviously your defenses are up and nothing is getting in. You're not actually examining this. Debates are useful for those who are watching, especially the undecided who are watching and listening and considering. Yeah. Debates are never useful for the people debating, except for to up their chops at debating. Right. And that's why Facebook is such a gong show.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and I think too, that's why it's important that we not only, because I do think debate's important. And so I think it's important that we engage in debate, and that, but I also think it's important that we have friends, and we have friends on multiple aspects of, our brothers and sisters in Christ who believe differently than we do in, certain theological, and I want to be clear here. Like, I think that, we have things that we can't compromise on. I mean, there are things that we look at and we say, okay, this is just gospel central. And so we can't really compromise on that. I can still love this person. I can still, interact with them and all that, but I can't compromise my belief on this. And then I think there are things where we can be like, you know what? I can drop my guard a little bit to see if what they're saying actually makes sense, and to actually consider and contemplate what they're saying, and really, choose to look into it and study it a little further. And I think we're missing a lot of that relational aspect where here's a friend that I trust, here's someone that I enjoy speaking with, and they think about these things differently than I do. Is it so wrong that I consider these things? Because it's not going to compromise my faith in the gospel and who Jesus Christ is, but it's challenging me to look at it from their perspective and say, and sometimes, like, I know for me, it forced me to go back to my perspective of where I was before I accepted Reformed theology, and be like, oh yeah, I do remember the arguments. It's not that I was stupid. I remember the arguments. I remember they were sound, and so I remember where they were coming from. I see things differently now than I did then.
And you remember that when you were making the argument against Reformed theology, you loved Jesus.
Yes, exactly.
That's important to remember too.
Yeah, absolutely. That I was still a believer. I still, looked at, yes, Jesus is my only hope. He is my salvation. There is nothing else. So yeah. And
you didn't think that you weren't thinking in synergistic terms. I mean, I admit at one point I went down in the basement of a church and I found an old bulletin board, an old unused classroom at the time, and it had this thing on it that said, salvation, our part and God's part. And it was like, our part is very small. We do XXXXX, and we do our part, then that makes God do his part, which is very big. And I tore the thing down and threw it away. But that's like 99% of Christians, most of whom, if you ask them, are you an Arminian or a Calvinist, they wouldn't even know the terms.
Right.
If you went through it, they'd be like, well, no, I don't think God decides beforehand whether or not I'm going to believe. But at the end of the day, they don't think that they're doing a piece of the work and God's doing the rest. They just, they haven't thought through a lot of, the later chapters of Romans.
Right.
When we read about God, creating the vessel for common use, they're thinking about loving their neighbor and telling people about Jesus and being able to walk up to someone and say, Jesus loves you. Right. Which, by the way, I don't think a Calvinist should worry about that. Like, I don't know if I can tell them that because maybe God doesn't. Right. I tell people Jesus died for your sin if you put your faith in him. Right. And I know that's a fact. Right. So yeah, it's kind of a you get so caught in where you are in that second. You look back at yourself and you're like, well, I was probably okay, but this guy, and you attribute to them I have this funny memory. I don't know how we got on completely on Calvinism. I guess because it's something that Calvinists are experts at making too much of something.
Yeah.
That's probably why we wound up on the topic. But I remember being in college in the mid-'90s. There was this guy who worked as a research librarian or something in the library. He had a PhD from the seminary. He was such a nice guy. And he had cancer in his brain. And he got brain surgery, and one eye was always closed after that. And so everyone knew him because he walked around with one eye closed because they severed the nerve. And I remember one of my profs telling me, the funny thing, when I prayed for him before they did that brain surgery to remove the cancer, he said, just pray they won't remove the part of my brain that has my Calvinism. And I remember I kind of froze, and I remember thinking, but that guy seems so nice. Is he really a Calvinist? I remember having kind of that, wait a minute, that guy's so nice. How could he believe that in this mean God that's just choosing some people and saying to others you got no chance? And I mean, I've been exactly there. So when someone says that to me, I have to make myself remember.
Right.
And I think the same thing is true when you're on Facebook and you see people who are young, acting dumb, talking out the side of their mouth. And remember, I know what that's like. I can force myself to remember.
Right. And
therefore, I shouldn't think less of this person because they are what they are at the moment.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. That's one of the things that I'm constantly going into my classroom with now as an administrator, and reminding my teachers, it doesn't matter how good we think we were young, we were dumb, we did stupid things, we have rules, we have standards, we need to uphold those, but let's also remember that they're still learning, they're still growing, they're still developing wisdom, they're still developing in maturity, and it's going to take some of those young dumb decisions to for them to get a kick in the head and be like, oh yeah, I realize I shouldn't be doing those things, and moving on from there. So yeah,
we're low on time, but I want to address the second half of your question, which was, what are the things that Christians should make a bigger deal out of but don't? Mm-hmm. And I think that the one thing that we forget, which is the most important thing to remember, but we're so caught up in all this other stuff, is that all those houses that you drive by when you're going to this church, when you're going to work, when you're wherever you're, all these people everywhere eating their dinner, getting up in the morning, driving next to you, a bunch of them, the majority of them are on their way to hell.
Yeah.
And our job is to tell them about Jesus. And we barely make a big deal out of that anymore. Yeah. And what's funny is I will argue all day long that Reformed theology and being very theological and deep expository preaching and inductive Bible study, none of these things really have in the history of the church hamstrung outreach or missions or evangelism. Mm-hmm. In fact, my church is named after the greatest Baptist missionary, the first American Baptist missionary, the first American foreign missionary, Adoniram Judson. And he was a hardcore Calvinist. We look at people like William Carey, mm-hmm. and the notion that we can't fail at evangelism because of the doctrines of grace. And even though that's historically true, I look around at, the people that were in my life when I was kind of just a kid at church, a youth group kid, mm-hmm. and we had a lot of passion about reaching the lost. And when I look around at kind of my, curated over the past 10 years, 1,000 friends on Facebook, probably 350 of them are just people, Phil Johnson, Frank Turk, and these 7 other people were friends in common. So we joined up and we're all, we're the same breed of cats, mm-hmm. and we like each other. I just don't see the passion for reaching the lost and the urgency and the lamenting. Mm. And I'm not, those 2 guys I just mentioned by name, I don't mean them. Right. I mean, in general,
right.
When you're in a place of just kind of simple Christianity,
yeah.
There tends to be, I think, more of an emphasis on that sad fact, and that we need to do something about it.
Yeah.
And when you get into, we've got so much to discuss here, and we're so learned, and and this is all true, and it's deep, and it's important. It's easy to let those things push out you just kind of take up the brain space that used to keep me up at night going, what can I do tomorrow to show someone the gospel?
Yeah. Yeah. No, and I agree. And I feel like I feel like we don't make a big enough deal about grace, because I think if we did, we would understand everything that you're talking about, Zach, that it's grace, God's grace in my life that should compel me to go out and preach the gospel to people. That understanding of who I am without Christ, and that there are people all around me who don't know Christ. That is what should compel me to go out there and preach the gospel, so that they can experience that same freedom that I've experienced, and have that same freedom that I have. And yeah, I agree 100%. Is, we've lost sight of, simply going to your neighbor and being like, hey, do you want to come over my house Saturday night and have a burger? Do you want to get together and go out and talk and do something? And I have a group of friends that I love getting together with, and part of the reason why I love getting together with them is because I know that most of the people who I'm going to be around when I'm with these particular group of friends aren't believers. And so I love it because they enjoy hanging out with me, and they're confused that I can hang out and have a good time and call myself a Christian. And so I've had some amazingly fascinating conversations with these people in the midst of that. And, saying, I don't know what your perspective is on Christianity, but, if you're going to, look at, freedom, and, you want to be free, and you don't want to be bogged down by, all these things. I mean, that's why I'm free. I have the freedom to hang out with you guys, and I'm not worried. And, they know that they can be real around me, and they don't have to watch their language and this, that, and the other. And I like that. And it's not that I'm any less of a Christian. Some people will hear that and be like, well, you must be doing something because you're not offending them properly enough with the gospel. And I would say, no, I'm not annoying them with the gospel. They know clearly what my position is on certain things. They'll go and they'll, drink till they're drunk, but they know I won't, and
are you talking about Greg Dutcher now?
That's right.
Oh, by the way, I don't know if I told you this, but I've decided to start a whisper campaign that Greg Dutcher is a secret drinker.
There's nothing secret about it. Dude, I got to be careful now. But we used to, when we first started doing the podcast, we used to get together for dinner all the time. And there may have been a 6-pack or two involved.
Oh, man. Church discipline. Church. But when you're the founding pastor, all you got to do is just, if somebody says it, just kick them out. Just throw them off the Mars Hill. Throw them off the bus. A pile of bodies behind a bus.
Let the bodies hit the floor.
Oh, man. Hey, you remember when Weird Al... stop your timer. We're off track. Remember when Weird Al came out with his version of Another One Bites the Dust, and it was Another One Rides the Bus?
Yes.
And another gets on, and another gets on.
Can we... Can next episode we just talk about Weird Al songs the whole time?
I would love that so much.
Amish Paradise?
I feel like Weird Al is an absolute genius of our generation.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, just eat it.
And you know what's hilarious? So that dude plays all those instruments, and he's ridiculously talented guy.
Yeah.
Even if you don't think it takes any talent to come up with the parody lyrics, I think it does. But if you don't, just from a point of view of just a musical theory and execution, I mean, this guy's he's very good. Yeah. And yet he's a believer. He belongs to, at least the last I heard, he belongs to a non-instrumental tradition.
Oh, wow.
So they sing a cappella, and there are all these, I believe, convoluted reasons why they think instruments, especially mechanical instruments, are kind of the devil.
Yep.
But I think it's Church of Christ Non-Instrumental or one of those. Good people, good solid teaching and everything. I don't have any beef with them. I just think that's kind of funny and a little ironic.
Right.
That this guy that we've all heard, poke your eyes out.
Yep.
He's playing all the stuff you hear on his albums.
Yep.
But when he goes to church, he's just singing. Man, I'd pay to hear Weird Al like earnestly, without any tongue in cheek or anything, just singing like "I Could Sing of Your Love Forever."
Oh yeah.
What if he came up with a totally straight worship album, no shtick?
Oh man, that would be so cool.
You know what? Let's have him on next week and talk about that.
Have your people call his people.
I'm right on it.
Oh, man. Actually, it's funny because you mentioned Weird Al. I mean, another one, I don't know if you remember Mark Lowry and all the stuff that he did. I mean, all that stuff was absolutely phenomenal. I enjoyed all of his music. I enjoy good parody songs. I think
he did the Baby Baby, where it was all the words from Song of Solomon.
Yes,
he was singing them to his girlfriend. But there was a group that tried really hard to be like the Christian Weird Al. It was called Apologetics with an X. And really? I thought they were just a disaster. Like the rhymes and it was so bad. And like people were like, "Oh yeah, this is great," because they could listen kind of to the music they liked being covered, but not really, and they didn't have to feel guilty about it. And I'm like, I just listen to the real thing and don't feel guilty about it, man. It's easier and it's less corny.
I know. Oh man. Well, dude, I mean, we hit the topic.
We made it to the end. We came out the other side. Listen, man, we should expand. I think we should open hot yoga up and down the eastern seaboard, and this place is not in danger of going under.
We're ready to franchise this thing.
Yes. Just need a name.
That's right. All right, man. Well, this was great. I thoroughly enjoyed it. I honestly wasn't sure how much we were going to get out of this. 2 weeks later.
I love that every time we are about to wrap it up, we're about to land the plane. You like how God the Father pronounced each day's work after he created, the expanse between the water above and the water below, and he looked at it, he said, "Well, this is good." You always do that with our app, and it's a nice up way to end it. Like this has been good. This is great. It's been enjoyable. Well, I feel like
I don't know how well it would go over if we got to the end. It was like, all right, well, this was a load of crap. Now, what are we going to do next?
Once in a while, that's true, though. This was iffy at best.
Maybe I'll try to think about that the next time. Like, just have a really honest assessment about the podcast.
Well, you just wasted an hour of your life, and you'll never have it back. We just dropped the Casbah.
Oh man. Oh, all right, dude. Well, we're gonna go ahead and sign off now. Zach, we just rocked the Casbah.
These go to 11.